Hello, it's Martin, back again with the Mini Electric, the F56 generation, and I thought I would show you some of the parking assistance features. Because even though technically speaking it's not the latest and greatest Mini has an offer these days, with the new Mini Cooper just about to come out, this is still a very competent package, and you will see in practice it works really well. Now, we do need to discuss the specification of the vehicle you are looking at or working with, because the features do vary across the lineup. If you go for the entry-level, level 1, you get absolutely nothing, not even reversing parking sensors, no reversing camera, nothing like that whatsoever. With level 2, I think that's the sweet spot. You get the reversing camera and the rear parking sensors, but nothing on the front. Whereas with the level 3, you get the full package. So reversing sensors, reversing camera, front sensors, and the parking assistant. The second thing to point out is that the wheels are already absolutely destroyed. So you can see the rear one is scuffed, and especially the front near side, which is the most common one on these used cars, is also scuffed very heavily. That's not the system's fault. It's clearly the previous owner just wasn't very good at parking and utilizing all the features. With that said, let me go into the parking interface and make sure that all the settings are set up correctly, because we see this quite often where, for example, yes, obviously you've got reversing camera, so it's quite handy for reversing, but there's a lot more to it. Firstly, yes, you can adjust the brightness and contrast, but that's honestly a little bit pointless. This is not a movie you're filming, it's just a reversing camera. But I would recommend ticking these two boxes on. So the first one is the parking lines, and you see now they've appeared on the screen, the green and the red ones. And the second one is the parking distance sensor overlay. It's almost like augmented reality. I will show you how that works in a second. The last thing to do is to go into this settings tab and to make sure that automatic park distance control is activated. This just means that when you come up to an obstacle, and even if you're not in reverse and you don't have the switch toggled on, the parking sensors will come on and alert you of any potential obstacles. So let's actually go out and test out the parking assistant in practice. Let's say that I'm going along this quiet residential street in London. I just flicked on the park assist button, and you can see on the screen the car is detecting parking spaces on the left and the right. It's not very clever, and I will explain why in a second, but let's say that I want to park just behind this Mazda. Excellent. It's telling me to stop the vehicle, reverse, and just to be sure I will also indicate, and that's it. Now I'm controlling the acceleration, the braking, the car is doing the steering. I can go a little bit quicker if needed, it's still happy to do so. And all I'm doing is making sure that the traffic situation allows for what it is trying to do and that it doesn't scuff the wheels. Perfect. Now I get a message saying drive forward slowly, so into drive. And off it goes. Parking completed, please secure the vehicle. So that's it. Into park, handbrake on, and the car is satisfied with the result. As you can see, it parked quite parallel to the curb, like you would expect it to, so that's all good, and it didn't scuff the wheels. Now, this is the caveat where I need to explain how the system works, because it's not very clever. It doesn't use the camera at all for looking for the parking spaces. It only uses the side ultrasonic sensors. So it measures the gap in between the vehicles, and if there's a gap long enough for the Mini to fit in, then it will simply reverse into it just like you saw. It doesn't really see curbs that well, because the sensors don't have such a big range when you are passing the cars on the road. So what it just tries to do, it tries to align the outer edge of the Mini with the other parked vehicles on the street. So this brings the big important caveat to say that if there are very small cars parked right up against the curb, the Mini will try to tack in too aggressively and it may scuff the wheels. So that's the reason why you are still very much in charge, and you should always supervise what the system is doing. Now, I appreciate this wasn't much of a challenge, it's a big space and so on, so let's try something a little bit more difficult. And let me show you some of the other features as well, because even though this technology has been around for ages, the way it's implemented in the Mini is very nice. So let's say that I come in here like this, and I'm looking for parking spots. I'm doing about 12 miles per hour, and I suddenly realize, oh, I want to park in there, but I didn't have the park assist on. Well, that's no problem. Even if you pass the spot and you turn the park assist on later, it was looking for spaces in the background. So it has recognized that, and it's the same procedure as before. I pop the car into reverse. I just make sure that the traffic which is passing me is not going to crash into me. That's good. And off we go. And it will keep going. Now you may say, oh, it's a bit far away from the curb. What you can do at any time, you can take over the steering. It cancels the park assist and you can continue the maneuver yourself. If you then realize, oh, I actually messed up, I want the computer to take over again, you can just press the park assist switch again and you see the steering wheel starts moving on its own. It tells me to keep reversing. Drive. And that's it, parking completed. Nice and simple. So the fact that you can interrupt the parking is quite rare. Most cars, once you interrupt the procedure, it will not let you resume. And also the fact that it's always looking for the spots in the background, even when you don't have the interface active, is definitely a handy thing to have. Obviously, I think we need to state that, you know, if you have trouble parking into spaces this big, you probably shouldn't be on the road. But at least, you know, it's a nice, handy feature to have. And even though it's definitely a gadget, at least it's very well implemented. It actually does the job it's supposed to. What I personally find it handy for is that if you're just passing through a street and you obviously have to look out for pedestrians, cyclists and so on, and you quickly pass the spot like here, it just means you can flick the system on and you can instantly tell whether the spot is big enough, because obviously if the space is too short, the Mini will not suggest it. And if you want the car to do the parking, it can, or obviously you can continue on your own. It's completely up to you. But as you can see, it is fairly consistent in how it parks. It's very, very well done. And it just centered itself in the spot there. The only problem is that all of these spots have been quite large, so I really want to find one which is a bit tighter, because I've had it park in some pretty challenging situation, even with multiple kind of point maneuvers needed, and it managed just fine. So let me try to find a bit more of a challenge for it. Obviously, in situations like these where we are passing an empty set of bays, it will not recognize that as a spot really, because it needs to see the gap between individual vehicles with the ultrasonic sensors. It doesn't know whether that's just a curb or, you know, a wide road or anything like that. Oh, here we go. This is more like it. So, reverse. Also important that I'm driving over a speed bump here, which is important to mention because the parking assistance systems which do the acceleration and braking on their own, they usually struggle with this, because obviously they can't recognize the difference between a speed bump versus the vehicle hitting something, so they usually just freak out. Likewise, they don't work very well uphill. It's very cautious, there's plenty of space here. Still forward, okay. There you go, parked up. I mean, I probably would have done it in fewer takes, but yeah, it's nicely aligned with the curb. I'm fitting just into the bay. As you can see, the edge of the Mini is aligned with the other vehicles. How it should work. Beautiful. The one thing I would do if I'm parking myself, to be honest, is try to tuck a little bit closer into the curb, because even though I'm well within the bay, obviously, especially in London on these busy streets, if you don't want to get your mirror knocked over, with the Mini being quite compact, there's plenty of room left on the near side, so I would just shift the entire car along a little bit, just to make sure that there's a bit more clearance between the road and the parked vehicle. It's not all about parallel parking though, because as I showed you, the reversing camera has quite a few helpful features to make you perpendicular parking easier as well. Let me use the space between these two vehicles on the left. I can manually turn on the camera if I want to in advance. And the important thing now are these red guidance lines on the very edge. So as I turn the steering wheel, you will see they become highlighted, and that's your maximum steering lock. So I know that if I align the outer edge with the outer edge of the space, I will fit. And secondly, the green lines, they do scale appropriately with the camera view. So I know that if the green lines fit in between the two vehicles, I know that the Mini will actually fit in the real world as well. So all I need to do is, obviously, from time to time, you do need to check your mirrors and the view out of your windows as well. But you see, even though it's quite a narrow spot, I will nicely center myself in here And you may have noticed these colorful blocks, they highlight the distance to the obstacles based on the information detected by the parking sensors right within the camera feed. So I would say that's it. If you're not confident reversing, I would say that the reversing camera is a really handy feature, especially with the way it's implemented on these BMW and Mini products. Of course, the front sensors are good. The parallel parking assistant, as you saw, works quite well in practice, but it's definitely more of a gadget rather than a must-have. And yeah, I think that's all the things I wanted to covered. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments below. Thank you very much for watching. If you found the video helpful, give it a like, and I will see you in the next one.